Uranus is the planet of change and innovation. It's a planet of unexpected disruptions. It's the planet of chaos, upheaval. I call it jokingly but seriously like the friendliest bulldozer on the block. It goes through some sector of our birth chart and it says this infrastructure is faulty and shaky and we are going to tear it down to the studs and we are going to rebuild and revamp this part of your birth chart. And so since it's been running through Taurus of all signs, Taurus is the sign of stability, regularity, continuity, you know, structure. Taurus is fixed earth. It is like the steadiest of any zodiac sign in my humble opinion. And to have the planet of disruption and chaos move through the sign of stability and regularity is why the world feels upside down right now, amongst other transits. Like there's plenty else going on in the sky that I think has been so wildly disturbing, as well as, you know, maybe radicalizing. I think there's actually upsides to really chaotic transits. But when I think about why does life, the economy, society, you know, the larger political, social, you know, economic sphere feel like everything that was once right side up is like right side down. One of the key elements, I believe, is the planet of change and innovation and chaos bulldozing through the sign of what used to be normal. What we used to be able to rely on, what we used to think was like a fixture of our identity. So I want to talk about Taurus and I want to talk about Uranus. And then I do want to talk about like how it's affected each of us individually. I really don't wear a ton of face makeup. I have freckles and I also have super sensitive kind of like rosacea prone or, you know, milia prone skin. So there's not a ton that works for me. Plus, I know everyone's different, but with my freckles, I've struggled to find the right maybe base or consistency for, you know, skin stuff, just because I don't want to X out all of my freckles by any means. Like I think it's one of my favorite things. So I'm actually going to use, this is a Ven, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, but it's a French beauty brand and it's, the anti-rouge, like anti-redness line. And it's just a like, tinted SPF 30. So nothing too crazy. So Uranus essentially says, let's go through some aspect of our lives and let's begin to, like I said, tear it down to the studs and do some major reconstructive surgery on this part of people's lives in the birth chart. But I want to talk about why it would go through Taurus. Like why, you know, I call the planets jokingly and seriously my higher ups. I think that's actually true for everyone. You know, the way astrology works is theoretically as above, so below. So this idea of like, for example, the planet, the moon is affecting the tides, it's affecting our crops, maybe theoretically it's affecting our cycles, you know, maybe the planets above are in this same sort of cosmic orbit that we are. And so their, you know, changes in their movements are directly impacting the movements that are happening down here. So why would Uranus make its, you know, intentional, chaotic transit through the sign of things that make us feel safe and stable in the world? I mean, like, God damn it. It'd be so nice to have some consistency and regularity in each of our lives and the world around us. But I think it's been doing it for a reason, because as much as I adore the sign Taurus. Like all of my best friends are Taurus suns. I find a lot of comfort in that sign because I have so little of it. I am much more of a Uranian personality. I have a stellium in Aquarius. So, and since I'm a Virgo rising, Taurus rules my 9th house. Like I think in some ways I just view Taurus as being like a very wise, gorgeous sign, but I am going to shit on it for a few minutes. Just talking about the stickiness of that sign and like why it can actually get in its own way and why maybe Uranus needed to change some things. So fixed earth, right? So it's an earth sign, it's sturdy, it's regular, fixed energy. I call it the middle child of the zodiac signs. And the middle child, as we all know, can be maybe too sure of what they want, maybe not agree. It's not that they're not agreeable. Maybe they have such a clear vision of how they see the world that they're not very amenable to different perspectives. So if you add fixed to earth, all of a sudden you don't just get gorgeous, sturdy soil in Taurus. If you think about the shadow of Taurus, is what happens to soil when it is unchanging, unattended to. People have to till soil, or they have to water, nourish the soil. If we leave the soil, metaphorically, the earth as it is, not all earth, but like, let's say, a very fixed part of the earth. If it goes unattended, then nothing can grow inside of it. It turns drier and drier, turns into like calcified rock eventually. And so I want you to imagine there's a possible aspect of each of our lives in society, individually, in our relationships, in our careers, that was calcified rock. Is that even a word? I don't know. Calcified earth. I'm going to make that up if that's not a real thing. And I want you to imagine that nothing gorgeous could bloom in that soil any longer. It had gotten so stuck in its ways. It had become so kind of like stuck in a rut, stuck in a routine, that Uranus, this mischievous, I consider all the planets benevolent. I fully understand that some people believe there's benefic and malefic planets. I mean, we can see that playing out in real time. Not every transit is fun. But what I mean by I believe every planet is benefic is that I think that they, even if it comes out in a hard, harsh way, it is always, I believe, in the better. It's always for the better for our individual lives and for our collective lives. So I think this chaotic, mischievous planet called Uranus was like, you know what? I think it's time to like really fuck shit up. Because if we do not crack through some of this soil, nothing is going to blossom here. And the sign of Taurus is gorgeous. Like, so much can grow in Taurus, you know, like there's so much potential in that arena. And I think Uranus was like, we need to rehab this garden within the sky, and we need to dig out some of the crap that has been slowly but surely becoming so fixed in the earth that's going to end up just like being a fossil, and it's not going to be something, it's just going to be like a fragment of the past. It's going to have no potential for new growth. And so in 2018, when Uranus began its transit through the sign of Taurus, where it will remain, if I'm not incorrect, until May of 2025, I should Google it. I might pause and Google it. Check. Uranus and Taurus. You know, as astrologers, we can remember a lot, but remembering exact dates around all the transits is not my suit. Uranus and Taurus dates. This is the best part of being a modern astrologer, is you can just Google things. Will remain there until July of 2025, so it wasn't too far off. What it has been doing is it has been taking aspects of our fixed identities and our fixed sense of how we see the world, and it's been saying this shall not continue. So I want you to imagine Uranus is like a jackhammer. It is going into this fixed set of oil that's like soil that might as well be concrete at this point, and it's taking this hammer, this drill, and it's just slowly but surely been cracking through so much of that dead, hardened, fixed, immovable soil. And what is it looking for is a really good question, because when we think about transits through one particular sign, and like a transit like Uranus or a transit like Pluto, I always think about what is it trying to resurrect. If we're digging up something or digging through something, or if we're disrupting something, what are we searching for? Because we don't go digging through the soil just to fuck with the earth, right? We're looking for something. Underneath all of that fixed, cracked, kind of way too set in its ways Taurus soil is Scorpio. Scorpio is the sign of metaphysical truths. It is fixed, but it's water. And so I want you to imagine there is this pool of deep, nourishing honesty, the truth, the trauma, the pain, the suffering. Scorpio rules everything shadow related. You know, whenever I think about therapeutic work, I'm like, oh, there's Scorpio doing its beautiful job of being able to make all of us more conscious of our unconscious motivations. So I want you to imagine Taurus has been saying, we're going to disrupt your normal life. We're going to take something that was so fixed for you, a relationship, a job, a political belief, a political figure, a social figure, a place in the world. We're going to take that, we're going to completely jackhammer through it, and you are going to feel this deep, deep, deep sense of instability. It's going to make you feel like you're being punished. It's going to make you feel like, why couldn't I rely on this thing? This was the thing that was going to like keep me safe in my life. You know, Taurus can be a very comforting sign. So if we're like drilling through Taurus, all of a sudden, everything that made us feel comfortable is suddenly super uncomfortable. Imagine it's drilling through that and it's like, hey, I know this is painful, but once we can crack through this and you let go of relying on this in some ways, untrue sense of stability, or at the very least, unnourishing sense of stability. We are all relying on something too much, and we were relying on something for too much heaviness to the point where it was holding us back from what we really, really needed to know. Taurus being like, you know, fixed earth and this very earthly sign, it really can hold us back from emotional honesty. You know, like I can think for myself, times in life in which I said, you know, realistically, I'm having a really hard feeling and I want to cry and I want to go like, you know, roll up into a ball on my couch and like journal, and I probably should meditate. And instead I'm like, let's whip out the credit card and go shopping. You know, that's an example of choosing Taurus over Scorpio, or an idea of like, you know, I could work through that feeling, but instead I will just charge through physically. So I'll do something like I'll, you know, focus on my tasks or my routines, or, you know, I'll focus on creating this meal. Not that there's anything wrong with that, by the way. It's a beautiful thing to do, to utilize, you know, our physical senses to, you know, work through emotions. But the difference is, are we avoiding the emotions? Are we working through them? And so as Taurus has been disrupting and dismantling something that we used to emotionally rely on really intensely, it's inviting us to get to know the true heart and source of what we're really looking for in Scorpio. Scorpio is the water that is going to re-nourish that Tauran soil. And so for a lot of people, I think Uranus and Taurus, well, has been disruptive to our physical experiences. It's been a very tangible transit, you know. For some people, like big ups and downs financially. For other people, huge relationship changes. For other people, oh my God, my job and my career has been so unstable. All it has been doing is calling us back to that very Buddhist philosophy of like, don't get too attached to anything. Everything changes. Nothing is reliable. Betting your whole will in your life on something external will probably always fail you. Not because those things don't love you. It's just that's the nature of life. Everything's cyclical. Everything dies. And that's something that Scorpio knows so well. Scorpio being of the many traits of Scorpio, the sign of death and rebirth. And so what I've noticed in my clients and what I've also witnessed in my own experience is something has been taken from us, you know, the soil from which we used to, even though it was fixed and dry and, you know, really hard, and we were kind of boxing ourselves in, it was our rock. It was the thing that made each of us feel like we had a place in the world, you know. For me, it was my 9th house, and like a lot of my belief systems got really rocked during this phase of time since 2018, you know. Began studying different things. I began believing in different things. You know, I went through many different kind of spiritual practices. The 9th house rules religion. I feel like I've been on a crash course of discovering, quote unquote, what do I believe in? By the way, this is the Tom Ford eyeliner, and it's very expensive. I got this for myself as a birthday present. You know, I was feeling fancy and it was, you know, kind of punching above my weight a little bit. And I like it. I've worn liquid eyeliner since I was a kid, since I was like 13. And I just feel like, is this any more special than this L'Oreal? I really like the L'Oreal something I define or something. I just don't really find it to be any different than any other liquid eyeliner that I have. So I don't know. I don't mean to shit on it, but it's fine. It's not bad. It's just not, it's not changing my life maybe in the way that I want to. Also, I have hooded eyes. I'm like, I hate how it does that weird. There was this Instagram or like this TikTok or something that was like, don't trust anyone whose liquid eyeliner looks like this. I'm like, we can't help it. It's our hooded eyes. Sorry. It's always going to look like a weird upturn. So, as we've been in this process of like feeling that the very thing that we could once rely on is no longer reliable, what I think it forced us to do is get really clear on what are the Tauran things that we can rely on? What are the true fixed earth things in which we could maybe depend on? So, you know, for some people, they realize, oh, I used to really, really rely on financial prosperity. That was taken from me. I realized that was no longer something that I felt like, sorry, I hate how my hair looks right now. I don't feel like that's something I have total control over anymore, because I mean, hello, welcome to the economy in the United States right now. And so then they begin to realize, well, I can't rely on that physical resource, but I can rely on Mother Nature. I can go for a hike, you know, even if I live in New York City, I can go to Central Park for a few hours and just be amongst SeaWorld for trees. That's a 1975 reference. I can go into Central Park, I can go, you know, to this body of water, I can go to this river, or I can be with my animal, I can be with, you know, I can just, there are other things to depend on. I can depend on slowly, really luxuriously, maybe sipping on my coffee in the morning, or, you know, I can really depend on smelling my baby's breath, or I can, you know, really like lean on my dog physically. I can just feel their breathing. I can feel how it feels, you know, to be next to them. There are other earthly things that we can be relying on that I think Taurus is asking us to really take a look at. So I'll give you an example just from my own personal life. I feel like when I lived in New York, because, you know, what's funny is I think Uranus and Taurus really disrupted my location, because I'm dealing with the 3rd and the 9th house, which are locational houses. And I moved out of New York, moved to rural Maine, of all places, quite drastic change from New York City, where I had been living for quite some time. By the way, this is the Merit. It's not bronzer, but I think it's like the, oh yeah, Bronze Bomb. I really like how it's kind of sheer, and I like that it's sort of this like creamy formula. I like to kind of give myself this ski mask tan. So where was I? This is the tricky thing about doing your makeup while you're talking about astrology. It'd be easier to probably just sit there, but I just feel like that's so boring for me. Oh, I noticed this a lot in my physical surroundings. And what I noticed is that when I was in New York, I was worshiping and really overly reliant on a lot of material things. So, you know, shopaholic, you know, like I shared in my other video, like eating disorders. And so maybe an over reliance on food and body. And, you know, my belief systems were a lot about like success and, you know, prestige and honor and like all of these sort of like external hallmarks of what it means to be a successful person in this world. And then, you know, what Uranus and Taurus did is I feel like it like completely shifted my belief systems. Like, I've always been a spiritual person, but I think it really forced me to look at, you know, like, what do I believe in? And, you know, outside of astrology, like, what do I worship? And, you know, what do I, how do I see the world and all those things? And so it really did make me a more earthly person. Like, I have such a different relationship with space and nature, space and time. It forced me to slow down. It forced me to stop working, as I shared in my other video, or stop working so much. And my curiosity for each of you is like, what was disrupted in your life that in many ways gave birth to like a more stable and maybe even more nourishing sense of stability and, you know, reliability and safety and all of those things. And, you know, what's interesting in the tarot is Taurus rules the Hierophant, which has always been so weird to me, but the Hierophant is symbolized by this religious leader. And so one of the many interpretations is like, oh, the Hierophant means you need to go find a teacher and you need to go find a mentor and someone who's going to like show you the way. And look, that actually has been the case for me in some ways of like, you know, I need to find this mentor and I need to listen to people. I need to take feedback. But I think the Hierophant is also about like owning and feeling sure of and secure in our own belief systems, of realizing, you know, society or this thing taught me that this thing would keep me safe, but in reality, I actually find a lot more peace and serenity in this other realm. So I want to give you some client examples. A lot of my clients who used to make a ton of money and like really sacrifice their own happiness for financial wealth have gone a really different path in these recent years. I think because of Uranus and Taurus, they're really beginning to value something different. For others of my clients that really overly prioritized instability. So maybe they were someone who was like, fuck money, fuck security. I'm just going to live fly by the seat of my pants. They're oddly the ones looking at more stable, secure jobs and just realizing like, you know, maybe this is not being a sellout and, you know, maybe this is good for my health and well-being to kind of prioritize my security a little bit more. Maybe I want healthcare, you know. For others of my clients, like their religious beliefs really changed during this period of time and they've really come to maybe worship Mother Nature in a different way than they did before. Other people who left the church when they were very young or, you know, whatever church that is, maybe they're beginning to return to it with a new light where they feel like they have more say and autonomy around what, you know, take what you like and leave the rest. They have more say over like what they're going to be absorbing in those environments and they don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater anymore. They want to discover this new sense of like feeling safe and held within those spaces. But the other thing that I've been thinking a lot about with Uranus and Taurus is a change in values, because Taurus rules money, it rules the material world, it rules, you know, what do we prioritize? And it also makes me think about pleasure. I mean, Scorpio-Taurus axis makes me think a lot about pleasure. And it, by the way, other signs allude to pleasure, etc. And I'm not even talking in a sexual way. I'm talking about like what feels rich and nourishing and pleasurable to us and our capacity for receiving. And so I think another huge change of Uranus sort of like, you know, drilling through this very fixed part of our birth chart is saying it is time to value something different in your life. You know, like for some people who overly valued work and money, it might be time to value, I don't know, home and family or their health and their well-being. Or for other people who maybe overly valued sacrifice for the family, they want to begin to value their own career prospects a little bit more. And so my question, because we only have a year left of this transit, it ends in July of 2025, is what are you hungry for? What are you starving of? What kind of cheap, this is a metaphor, what kind of cheap meal, not cheat meal, cheap meal have you been replacing for the thing that you're actually really, really craving in this life? And how has the disruption of the past, however many years since 2018, how has it forced you to address that? Maybe against your will in some moments, you know, there's been so many layoffs across industries, inflation, so much change has happened within relationships since the pandemic. Like, I just see the lack of stability in the world. I'm sure you guys do too, so clearly. And so the really interesting question to ask yourselves is like, I lost something, or at least I lost the foundation. How do I want to rebuild the studs of this metaphorical house? And so, you know, it might be Captain Obvious, but I think the lesson of these years is make sure you build a house with healthy studs. Make sure that they're satiating, beautiful. Make sure your house has the color and like the warmth that you're looking for, and make sure, and the house being a metaphor, make sure that you're building everything on solid emotional ground. Integrate Scorpio into your house building, you know. Just because something looks pretty and sturdy doesn't mean that it is. And we need authenticity and honesty, and we need depth, and we need all of these things in these parts of our lives that maybe we thought were just simple, but maybe they in many ways have become far less simple. Final thought from a large perspective, and then I want to go into each of the signs, is when this all shakes out by July of 2025, I want us all to imagine that the tectonic plate of our existence that have been shifting so drastically will begin to settle into a new normal. What I think is often common to desire is like, oh, okay, once that transit's over, I'll get back to the thing that I used to be doing. And look, in some cases that's true, that we can go back to the original foundation, or we can build a house that looks very similar to the old foundation. But I think my prediction, my guess, is that very few, if any, houses will be able to be built the same. I think the legislation has changed in the stars, so to speak. And so when all this shakes out, we will begin to have more say around what we're building starting in 2025 within the new tectonic plates and how they have settled. And so this new normal, this new paradigm, which by the way, there's so many other transits that are forcing us into a new normal, and I'll probably do my makeup again and tell you guys about them. But for this one in particular, since it's ending relatively soon, I want you to think about what are the tectonic plates of my life that have changed that I'm very likely will not be able to return to the original state prior to 2018. How am I grateful for that? And what foundations and structures and goals and plans and dreams do I want to begin building on that foundation to last a lifetime? Because what I, again, admire and love about Taurus is it is enormously reliable and stable. It is about longevity. Like, I think all of my Taurus people, I feel like they're super loyal. They are really interested in like sustainable, you know, quality over quantity. And so we're all going to start rebuilding. In some ways we have, but I still feel like we've just been tearing down structures for these years. You know, I think until July of 2025, there is still more soil to be rehashed. I think maybe the most traumatizing pieces of it are over, you know, maybe like the hardcore drilling's over, but maybe now all of us are just tilling the soil. None of us are actually fully planting new things in our garden. Maybe come July of 2025, and maybe even starting now, we can maybe make a map, or we can make some plans. We can consult someone, we can consult ourselves, we can consult the stars. We can begin to think about what we want to be planting come July of 2025 onward. And we can think about the ways in which we're really proud and really in love with this new soil, this new garden. You know, what's so cool about a blank slate in the birth chart, when Uranus bulldozes so heavily one aspect of our chart, we all have nothing left to lose.